Hello, everyone. I am excited about being here today to speak to you all. The title of my talks is Redefining the Urban Male Chicago Edition. And so before I really begin, I kind of want to take a flashback moment. That's me with the bow tie, can you tell? And I kind of want to take a moment, in the other pictures, kind of like doing that rewinding moment. So imagine back to being like 6 or 7 years old. And so for me, I remember when I was 6 or 7 years old and sitting at home and I was watching TV and I was watching this television show. And it was me and a group of my cousins. And I never forget, after we got through watching this television show, it was at that moment that they started saying, "I'm black and I'm proud, I'm black and I'm proud." And I remember I said, "Wait a minute, I'm black?" And I was like, "Wait a minute, no, I'm not black, I'm not black." And he was like, "Yes, you are." And I went to my mom, I was like, "Mama, I'm black." She said, "Yes, you are, boy, you are black." And it was at that moment, I was like, oh my God, I really figured out and understood that I was black at that moment. But I look at so many individuals that based off what they see on television, what they read, what they listen to, it can then cause you to have a negative self-perception of yourself. And what had happened with me is that based off what I had saw on television or what I was looking at, what I was reading or what I was seeing and hearing, that I had began to get this negative self-perception of what it meant to be black and specifically of what it meant to be a black male. So then that's what kind of gets to the point of talking about my talks, the urban male itself. Now from there, I live and I grew up in the Englewood area. Now if you keep following me, if you know anything about the Englewood area or maybe you do not know, so at the age, or me at a young age, you had it where I think the closest restaurant that I can remember is that we had a chicken and a gyro place that was right up the street. It's no longer even there anymore. And then the closest store was a liquor store on the corner, and then there was a corner store. And so these businesses were businesses that were not owned by people who looked like me. So now I begin to get to a place that I'm seeing vacant lots, where I'm seeing abandoned buildings, and based in the neighborhood, my family was real protective. So my mom was like, "Don't go off the block. Don't go out the yard." My family's in the audience, so I'm pretty sure they can attest to this. And so I couldn't go too far off the block or in the neighborhood. And now the negative things that I would see, and not saying that I or my family was negative, but just things that you would see within the environment of the neighborhood or what I would see on TV, again, it just instituted that negative self-perception of myself and what it meant to be black. So if I had to keep going, the unfortunate reality, when we look at violence in Chicago and beyond, based off what you're listening to, the music, the television shows, it is being promoted. And I never forget that I was watching this television show, and it was a producer or a CEO, and they asked him, they said, "Hey, how do you feel about promoting the violent music that you promote or the artists that you put out there?" And he said, "You know what? It doesn't bother me." And they said, "Well, have you ever went to Chicago? Have you ever been there?" And he said, "No." And I try to stay, oh, the thing that fell. That's okay. That's when you put it in your pocket. And he said, from there, I try to stay as far away as possible from that place. And it was when I saw this, and I was like, wow, here it is. You have someone that is a CEO of a record label or a music industry, and he's saying that he stays as far away from the South Side, but yet he's producing this music that young urban youth are being influenced by every day. Now, if we look at the statistics, the #1 killer of homicides for black men, for black and Latino men, I think the second leading cause is gun violence, is gun deaths. And in the next picture, you have it's a young guy who I consider like a younger brother of mine. He's actually in the audience today. He was shot in the face. And if you look at when he was shot in the face, his face like swelled up. And at that moment, I remember I got so angry, like when I heard, and I think it was my grandmother, the first one that told me, like, "Oh, did you hear about it? That this individual had got shot." And I was like, how did something like this happen? He would just walk to the store, minding his own business, and in minding his own business, he was shot in the face. And the picture after it shows 3 weeks later, once the bullet was removed, it went down. And so now we have it where this is the reality that's happening. But this young man right here, his life could have been taken away. But he's now a freshman at the University of Illinois in Champaign, Urbana. And with that, he wants to make a difference. He wants to be of service to the community. And this is what we got to continue to do. How do we redefine the urban male and make sure we're not seeing issues or situations that we are seeing? So my next thing, debunking the negative stereotypes. Now we're in a place. I never forget that think it was about a couple of years ago. I sat in a classroom with 5th through 8th graders. It was all young men. And I asked them, I said, tell me different stereotypes that come to mind when you begin to think about race or different individuals. And I said, whatever comes to mind, I just want you to say it. So off back, they're telling me different stereotypes. And can you imagine that they was the most negative when it came to themselves? And I asked them, I said, why are you so negative when it comes to yourself? And they said, well, this is not what we think of ourselves. This is what they think. And I said, who are they? Because they are not in the room. And then the other young man said to me, he said, well, this is my reality. This is what I see every day. This is what I watch on TV. This is the music that I listen to. And it was at that moment that I began to see that how do we begin to change this? Because people are now internalizing what they have seen, what maybe people have said to them, or maybe what they are not experiencing or experiencing within their neighborhood or their surroundings. So now to get to the place, I go to the next thing. It's redefining the urban male. Now, how do we change this, right? I never forget to myself. Now, here's a quick story. I try to make my story quick. Now, when I say quick, I'm pretty sure it's going to be quick. When I graduated college, I said, I am not coming back to Chicago. I said, whatever I got to do, I applied to 12 jobs outside of Chicago, outside of the state of Illinois, in Florida, in D.C., in New York, because I said, I don't really want to go back to that environment. I don't want to experience it. I don't want to see it. And this is a true story. I literally happened to run into a lady at an event. And she said to me, she said, you believe in God, but you know that I'm not God, but you know that people like me exist. And then she was like, shall I continue? And I said, sure, go right ahead. Go ahead and continue. And then she said, you have all these interviews lined up, but you're not going to get one offer from those jobs because there's going to be a job that comes after that you're going to know that that's the place for you, and they're going to know that you're the individual for the job. And then she said, do you trust me? I said, no, and I got up and walked out. And this is a true story, and my family can attest to this, because I remember asking my grandma, I said, can you tell me about this, because I ain't never experienced this one before. So now at this moment, she tells, I didn't get any job offers, and I never forget that I was at home and I cried, because I said I went to school, I got my bachelor's, I got my master's degree, and I could not get one job offer. And I know that I'm talented, I know that I'm really good, what's the issue? And I remember my grandmother said these words to me, she said, that just was not for you. That just means the opportunity that is for you is waiting on you. There's a great opportunity that God has for you. You just have to believe it and prepare yourself to work within it. And at that moment, I'm like, oh, I'm not really trying to hit this. I want these other jobs. But it was a job that came after that. And the job that came after that is the building that we're standing in today, Malcolm X College. Malcolm X called me and said, hey, we want to have you interview for the transition specialist position here at Malcolm X College. And I was literally the last individual that they interviewed. I ended up taking a position, and in this position, I was working with GED students to help them receive their GED to transition to college. I was on the west side of Chicago, off Kildare and Madison. If anybody know anything about that area, that's definitely a different type of area. So I was over there. And being in this area, I noticed that the young men were not completing their GED at the same level as the young ladies. And I said, I really want to do something. So I asked the dean, can I start a male mentoring group? She said, sure, no problem at all. So she allowed me to start this mentoring group. So when I started, it started with like 5 or 7 guys that was meeting me once a week. Then from there, it started growing to about 10 to 15 to 20. Like every week, I started having guys coming in. And then the next thing I know, they said, hey, can you expand this to the main campus where you work with 2-year college students? And I said, sure, no, why not? So now I had the GED students, and then now I'm working with the 2-year college students. Then from there, it expanded to where I had a course, an Intro to College Success course, specifically tailored just to urban males. And then from that point, I started seeing it where it was an expansion. So it went from, I just don't want to work at Malcolm X College, but how can we make this a community initiative to work with people, high school students, elementary school students, to be able to build a network, a system, to redefine what it means to be an urban male. So then that's how we went from Urban Male Initiative to now we are Urban Male Network. And so from that point, the first thing that you have to do is build a positive brotherhood and circle. I always tell people, if you want to see how successful you're going to be in life, take a look at your 5 closest friends. Your 5 closest friends represent the sum total of you. So each one of these individuals that you may not be around, when you put them all together, they make one you. And so with that, how do we begin to build this positive circle for people who don't have fathers in their home? Maybe they've been told in their life, you'll never be anything in life. Maybe they've never seen anybody that went to college. Maybe they've never seen anyone that was accomplished and have a career, that is a business owner or a lawyer or a doctor. But if we can build that positive circle in brotherhood, then we never know the change that can be made. And so these are real pictures of guys that I've sat with, and we sit in circles and we have conversations, because it's important to be able to have people to lift you up. You're only as good as your weakest link, is what I say. And then from there, I start having these guys, taking them to be of service to the community. It's so important for them to understand that the community that you come from, how do you help to change it? So we would go and do little things such as picking up the trash and helping to volunteer at an elementary school, or helping to volunteer at a church. And they got so much benefit out of it. They enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. And I'm not much of an individual to be out picking up garbage. I'm just going to tell the truth. It's just the truth. So with that, this was an opportunity where I saw change, because I saw them be of service to the community. From there, we had peer mentors. I call it the talented 10th. The talented 10th, W.B. Du Bois talked about the talented 10th. And the talented 10th represented the few, the educated, the elite that goes back and save the mass of the community. So he believed that you would have the mass of the community that would be saved by its exceptional few. And what I would do is I would tell these guys, you are the exceptional few. You have been educated. You have been enlightened. How do you begin to now go back to your friends, your circle, your family, and begin to change their mindset? Because if they see that you did it, then they're going to say, well, you know what? I never thought that I can do it, but if I'm looking at you and we come from the same background, same situation, same family, same circle, same friends, I know that I can do this, and I know that I can accomplish this. And so from there, I took guys to where we would go and mentor in the local community. We would go to other high school mentoring groups. We would go to the elementary schools. We would have group circles. We would play basketball. And this is a true funny story. I took a group of guys from Malcolm X College in my mentor group, and I took the high school guys as well to play against the elementary school. They both lost. And the elementary school kids was walking around, they got their chest poked out like, yeah, we beat them, we good. But what I started seeing is that it made them excited where they couldn't wait to see the guys again. They was opening up to have conversations. Like, they wasn't talking at first, but after they played a game of basketball, or after they was interacting with them, after they was laughing and joking, it was just like their guards was down. And they was listening to what these older guys were saying to them. They wasn't really older, but they was older than them. And these same guys who did not see themselves as mentors began to say, you know what? I never saw myself as a mentor because of the mistakes that I made. But here it is, I have a young boy or someone that listens to me that said they're inspired by something I said or did. They was committed. They was more committed to going to the meetings with the elementary and the high school students than they was the meetings with me. I said, you know what? This is great. I'm not even mad about it. And so then from that point, in this picture, if you can actually see it, I know it's a little bit light, we had it where we took the young men. A lot of them did not know how to tie ties themselves. So from there, I taught them how to tie a tie, and then they went and taught the elementary school kids how to tie a tie. So it's like you're passing it down. And so you're teaching them something, and then they're able to teach it to someone else. And I began to see that how, even though they didn't know how to do it themselves that well, it was a proud moment for them to be able to show someone else how to do it. And last, I want to get to the place of talking about academic excellence and graduation. So now we're in this place to where many of the guys who I've started to work with, I had one young man, he called me about a week ago. He was calling me like 3 or 4 times. I'm thinking something wrong. I said, what's wrong, what's wrong? It was like 10 o'clock at night. He said, I just want to tell you, you got to make sure you're at my graduation. I said, what? And he was like, yeah, you got to make sure you're at my graduation because you was there with me from the very beginning. And now he called me, he talked about how he's graduating. So he started with me at Malcolm X when I first started the group. This was like 3 years ago. And then now he's getting ready to graduate from UIC. And then he told me how he got accepted into the master's program. And he wanted to do exactly what I'm doing. And I'm like, wow, like I inspired you? And I had another young man who I helped who didn't even have his GED at the time I started working with him. And he was like, I've never been in a position where people would ask me or was fighting over me to say, hey, I want you to work for me, or can you come here, can you do this? I never had that feeling. I never knew what it felt like until you opened up the door of opportunity and told me about it. And so from there, I started seeing these young men getting their GEDs, getting ready to graduate from college, graduating from college. And I was like, this is what it's about. Now, what if I would have never came back to Chicago? Because if I would have did what Marlon wanted to do, which was go off into another city, go off into another state. But obviously, I see that God had a different plan for me when I thought the plan for my life was the plan that was perfect. But there was a different plan. Because many of these young men that I've been able to help, I've been able to work with, I've saw the change in their lives. And they look at it as that I inspired them, but really they helped to motivate and inspire me. And the guy, and last piece, and one guy that I really want to talk about is Benjamin Brown. And Benjamin Brown was a guy that was convicted for 5 years for armed robbery for being at the wrong place at the wrong time. And when he came to Malcolm X, I'll never forget, he enrolled in my mentoring program. He said, you know, I really want to change and have a positive mindset to do something different. This young man graduated with straight A's from Malcolm X College. And not only from that, he went back to the same re-entry program and was volunteering to help the convicts or the convicted individuals from there to help them get the better start in life. And now he's at UIC. So I look at all of these individuals who I say, wow, like how they've been able to change and make the difference. And so it shows you that you cannot allow yourself to become victim to your situation, but know that you have the victory. And that if you are motivated to make change, if you have an idea, a passion, something that's inside of you, follow it, go after it, because you never know the person's life that you are changing. You never know who's waiting on you to go forward so they can follow in your footsteps. And this is the place where I want to talk about how we begin to redefine the urban male, the Chicago edition. Thank you.